The following is intended for mature audiences.
What's up, Screamers? Before diving into the usual chaos, take a listen to this submission I received. So, something that I still wonder about is a time back to my senior year of high school when I worked at Taco Bell. There used to be this couple that would always come super late. The girl was always the one driving and her boyfriend or whatever he was always in the passenger. When I helped them a few times on drive-thru, I started noticing she was always super shy acting and looked at him a lot. One of my coworkers said he had even seen the guy slap the change out of her hand as they drove off one night. I started a conversation during one of our interactions, and her answers were short. Then the guy interrupted and said, "Nah, we're not doing this right now," so I backed off. He was probably the most off-putting dude I've come across working fast food. Like, he didn't give a fuck how he acted and who saw him. Then the girl came in during the day one time and asked if we had a phone she could use. The shift manager let her use the store cordless. I literally jumped because the guy came in and started yelling for her to get off the fucking phone now. I went into panic mode and called the cops right away. I felt bad after because I had snatched the phone from the girl's hand to call. It didn't feel right. They were both kicked out, but I felt so bad and scared for her because I didn't know what the situation was. It got busy, so I lost track of the situation. Apparently they were in the parking lot still because the police came and ended up taking the girl. I don't know, doesn't seem like much, but that whole situation didn't feel right. Like, I hope we helped her in some way and she was able to get out of whatever she was in. I just always think about it sometimes and hope to myself that she's doing okay out there.
Welcome to a world where darkness and mystery converge. Navigate the depths of horror and true crime and join a society beyond the ordinary, where buzzworthy topics, paranormal tales, and listener-submitted experiences blend into a realm of the unknown. You have crossed into a place where the unusual and the terrifying are just the beginning. My name is Ralph Anthony, and welcome to the Scream Society podcast.
Hello, Screamers. Welcome into another edition of the Scream Society. I hope you're all doing all right out there. I'm still hanging and tightly because in the dawn of another season of American Horror Story Coven, I am ready to make Madison Montgomery my entire personality again. Actually, maybe not because I'm getting too old for that. Okay, so some of y'all want to know my thoughts on the whole Buffy continuation being axed by Hulu, but basically, let me just get into that really quickly. They were trying to bring back Buffy, and it wasn't going to be like a full reboot, but more like a continuation, right? It was a continuation of the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer that ran from 1997 to 2003 on the WB, and then UPN for the later seasons. The golden era. Now, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Prince, is one of my favorite actors, as we all know. I didn't watch Buffy when it originally aired. I was more of a Charmed guy, as I've mentioned a million times on this podcast. But I did binge it back in 2012, and I was just so blown away by how good it was. I mean, I was a wreck during the season 5 episode, The Body. If you know, you know. But anyway, in early 2025, Hulu was developing this continuation, and it actually had a pretty stacked team. The pilot was written by Nora and Lila Zuckerman and directed by Chloe Zhao. Even freaking Dolly Parton was involved as an executive producer since her company helped make the original show, which is something that I just learned like not too long ago. So the biggest thing, Sarah Michelle Gellar was supposed to come back as Buffy. Apparently, Zhao was actually the one who convinced her to return. They started casting more people throughout 2025, filmed the pilot in LA, and the idea was that the show would take place like 25 years later or something like that. It was even titled Buffy the Vampire Slayer New Sunnydale, and they wanted it to be accessible for newer viewers but still connected to the original story. But yeah, it all fell apart because by March 2026, Geller confirmed it was canceled. Now, from what came out, the decision was mainly coming from an executive named Craig Ehrwick. Allegedly, okay? Geller basically called out this leadership for not really caring about the original show. Skid marks. But apparently, there were a number of other issues behind the scenes that we don't know about. The pilot apparently wasn't hitting the mark at first because there are rumors that the pilot felt too young, so they had to rewrite it and make it darker and more Buffy focused. I've mentioned this a lot, and that's actually been my biggest issue with modern television. Even some movies too. 2025's I Know What You Did Last Summer felt odd. Even Scream 7's writing was a little wild, as I've mentioned. So if this show had that same energy, then I probably would have just tuned out. But we weren't even given the chance to see it. Apparently, also, it had gotten too expensive after rewrites were ordered, and execs didn't think it was worth the money or felt like it was too small for the budget. So it was like creative issues plus money plus people in charge not being into it, which is kind of the worst combo here. And the timing was brutal too. They canceled it the same week Zhao was at the Oscars and Geller was out promoting Ready or Not 2 at South by Southwest. And what really pisses me off is Sarah Michelle Gellar had always said no reboots, that the story of Buffy was done. There's no need to revisit. And the fact that she was convinced and came on was huge, right? And they still fumbled. With this, I'm like 70-30. I really would have loved to see what they came up with, how they progressed this story, who they would have brought back. But we weren't even given the chance. But the other 30% of me is wondering if it was as bad as these greedy execs were saying, then maybe it was for the best. I don't know. We may never know. And what I think should honestly really happen for these types of projects here, just put people in the room who actually love the source material, who love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, not just people who see it as a brand or whatever. Bring in writers who understand horror and understand camp, who understand that Buffy worked because it balanced all of that. It balanced trauma and genuinely fun, creepy stuff. Remember the silent episode? Ugh, that was so fucking good. I don't know. My main issue is the fact that they wasted my girl Sarah's time. I think that's the biggest crime out of this entire situation. Don't be wasting people's time. Lately, just Hulu and Disney, all of y'all, y'all have not been passing the vibe check lately. Let's get into sinister subjects now. Okay, first, take a listen to this so you get an idea about what this episode's sinister subject is going to be about. Take a listen really quickly.
Francis Dross. And over the past 20 years, I've compiled a library of the many faces of death.
What caused this man to murder his family? Is our society to blame? As I studied these mummies, I had the feeling that each one had a different story to tell about their own death. John Wilkes Booth, James Earl Ray, Lee Harvey Oswald. There was another member that I neglected to add to the list of assassins, Francois Jourdan.
During the past 20 years, I know that my compulsion to understand death was much greater than just an obsession. The dreams have dictated my mission, and now it is time to witness the final moment, to discover a circle that forever repeats itself, the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end.
I'm giving you a little history lesson here first. So way back in the day, as a child, as far back as I can remember, my cousins, my aunts, even uncles used to mention this VHS called Faces of Death. Now, this was a mockumentary, shockumentary / Mondo horror style film, with the definition for Mondo horror being to intentionally have its viewers feel physical and psychological fear. And there were a ton of these types of VHS tapes from the 70s and 80s going around during the mid to late 90s, some even from that time frame as well. I vividly remember watching one called Banned from Television, which showed actual documented deaths. So at the age of like 9 or 10, here I was watching actual executions, real people being burned alive, a woman getting hit by a train, a man shot in the chest by a shotgun, and the list goes on. Like, the 90s were such a different time, and the fact that I was exposed to that so young explains a lot of my desensitization today, honestly. Then I eventually watched Faces of Death, and it was traumatizing because it made me think of and fear death in a way that I hadn't, and I was so young. Now, the original Faces of Death is from 1978 and was framed as a genuine documentary. It's about a fictional pathologist named Francis B. Gross, portrayed by Michael Carr, as he guides the audience through a graphic compilation of fatalities. This also gets confusing too, because while several of these gruesome scenes were staged specifically for this film, much of the production relies on authentic, pre-existing footage of actual deaths and their aftermaths. So it was like this fusion of real and fake that was pretty shocking. Of course, there were sequels that I've never seen, but it spawned this popularity among people, and I'm sure was a hot item for video rental stores. And if you are squeamish or don't want your day ruined, do not go looking for ways to watch these shockumentaries. Although at this point, I mean, there are far worse things to witness on the internet. That's exactly what the 2026 adaptation leans into. Now, when I had first heard that there was going to be a reboot of Faces of Death coming, I was so curious. Like, how are they going to pull this off? I was even more curious when I heard fucking Charlie XCX was attached to the project. But holy shit, you guys. I just went to an early screening of Faces of Death 2026. And when I tell you, I was not disappointed. I was not disappointed. For a reboot, like, this is definitely not a typical remake. And for me, that's kind of why it worked. And I'm going to get into it without spoiling because the film is still new. But what this version of Faces of Death does is it takes that controversial shockumentary and turns it into something that's way more self-aware. Like, it's not trying to just copy the original or ride off of its reputation. Like, it actually builds on that. It evolves it into something that feels so current. I know it seems like a basic idea. We're living in a world of content. Let's film this. Let's post that. How can we take this little dance trend to the next level? Oh, let's go film in front of a moving train. Like, it's so much. And this film really puts a spotlight on all of that. Just a quick synopsis here. So you're following Margot, played by Barbie Ferreira, and her job alone is already kind of disturbing. I mean, she's this content moderator for a TikTok style platform, basically filtering out the worst stuff on the internet all day, which feels a little too real. Like, she sits there and goes through all of these crazy videos, from fights to sexual stuff and even what appears to be people dying. And she either puts a warning on it, lets it into millions of feeds, or she blocks it. Like, you know, when you see content warnings on videos on Instagram and TikTok, like, that's basically what her job is here. Also, there isn't really a sense of time. They briefly show that it's 2000 something, but it cuts away. The character of Margot literally has a Razr phone from the early 2000s, the flip ones, but other people have iPhone looking phones, so I'm not quite sure what time period we're in. And why that's a plus for me is because I believe it really allows the film to become timeless. Continuing on here, things get weird and very quickly when she comes across this group that looks like they're recreating murders from the original Faces of Death. And the deeper she goes, the harder it is to tell what's fake and what's real. That's really where the movie hits for me, because it leans hard into that meta commentary without beating you over the head with it so much. It knows how desensitized we are now, how even violence can get turned into content. It just kind of like holds up a mirror and lets you sit with it. Calling myself out here as well. I mean, what is this podcast based off of? And there are times where I'm literally scrolling through videos that are so fucked up, exposing my algorithm here. And there are times where I'm just like, what the hell am I watching? What is my algorithm, and how was this even allowed to be on Instagram? I mean, your algorithm is what you engage with, so that's on me, I guess. Anyway, Barbie Ferreira was great in this film. I only remember her from Euphoria. I'm not too familiar with her other projects, but she really dove into some really intense sequences where she is really struggling mentally. Now, will she piss you off at some point in this movie? Absolutely. But overall, she was great to me. But also, Dacre Montgomery in this, completely unhinged in the best possible way. For me, one of the best horror antagonists in a while. I mean, he's also really pretty, but that's beside the point here. His performance, though, like it gets better too as the film goes on, especially toward the end as well. Another standout here for me, before I forget, there's an LGBTQ plus character, which, hey, we love the representation. He literally represents me and other horror queers out there. Aaron Holiday played the best gay best friend we've had in a film in a while, okay? But like I said, like what I loved here is that Faces of Death doesn't fall into, that lazy remake trap, but it takes the DNA of the original and actually does something new with it. There's no over-the-top jump scare spam either. It's more about tension, visuals, that slow dread, the kind of scenes that stress you out. And by the end, you're not just like, that was a crazy ass movie, but like, it left me thinking about it. Like, I was legit paranoid walking to the car after, hoping that there wasn't someone around any corner about to inject me with fentanyl, then tie me up in a basement somewhere. It also left me thinking about what we watch, what we consume, why we watch it, and pretty much just how far people are willing to go just to go viral. And that's probably my absolute favorite part about this film, because for me was that it honestly sits in the same conversation as Scream 4, another one of my favorite films, which is one of those horror movies that doesn't just exist in the genre, but actually critiques society. I mean, come on, Jill Roberts, killing for fame, posting murders on the internet, not needing friends, but needing fans. And maybe the reason why I loved Faces of Death 2026 so much is because maybe that's what I was craving from Scream 7, this badass commentary on society. Like with Scream 7 now, like, sure, some people think it's the worst one before 7 came out, but in recent years, I feel like it's been getting its flowers for how ahead of its time it was and how groundbreaking the final 30 minutes are. Like, it has one of the best motives in the entire franchise. I wouldn't be surprised if people end up talking about Faces of Death the same way years from now. Okay, but my biggest question for Faces of Death 2026 is, why the fuck was Charlie XCX in this? Let's take a break.
From the blood-soaked depths of late-night horror comes a collection so shocking, so scandalous, it'll make your wardrobe scream. Want my face on your chest? Or maybe you just want to rep the cult, the logo, the legend, the Scream Society? Don't just listen to the nightmare, wear it. Rep it, live it. Get it now before it gets you. Head to scream-society.printify.me and rep Scream Society merch.
Welcome back. Did somebody call 911? Now, getting into this episode's 911 call, I have to ask you to imagine being this 911 dispatcher. You're answering 911 calls all day. I'm sure they hear it all too. But then something unthinkable happens. You realize that the emergency that's being presented to you is at your own house. Now, when I came across this call, I got a little emotional because as someone who hasn't really had much of a, what would I call it? Relationship with God or religion, seeing someone with such strong faith during a situation like this, it hit me a little bit. Enter Diane Lamb, a 911 dispatcher in Charleston. And going way back to December of 2006, she took a call about a shooting. And as the caller gave the address and details, Diane was told by the caller that her teenage son, Bruce, had been shot. And even though she was obviously terrified, even confused a bit, she stayed incredibly calm and professional. She stayed on the line, dispatched the ambulance to her own home, and even asked to speak to her son, saying she wanted to talk to him before he died. Take a listen.
Charleston County Emergency Services, Upper 29, on the location of your emergency.
Diane,
Yeah,
this is Caitlin.
yeah.
Bruce just got shot.
Are you serious? Where?
I'm serious. Bruce
Son.
just got shot
This is my
in the
son.
side. Your mom is the operator. Your mom's the operator.
Don't hang up. If he dies, I want to talk to him before he dies.
Bruce got the mama.
Put him on the phone. Bruce?
Yeah.
Hey, I love you. Now listen. Okay. Jesus is going to take care of you, okay? You'll be safe. You just need to calm down and just focus on that, okay? Press down on that wound, okay?
No, I know.
Okay, honey, take a breath. Take a breath, okay? You can do this. You can do this, okay?
Mama, he's puking, Mama. He's puking.
Roll him on his side.
Roll on your side.
Roll him on his side and clean it out. Bruce,
Yeah.
I love you, baby. Listen to me. Talk to Jesus.
Shot now.
Talk to Jesus.
I am.
Ask him to save you and do it
Yeah.
and just believe it, okay? Do you hear me?
I love you.
As for what actually happened, and there wasn't much documentation on this. It turns out it wasn't a targeted attack. Bruce was just hanging out with a 16-year-old friend who was messing around with a handgun when it accidentally went off. Bruce was hit on his side, and that's where the call comes in. But, plot twist, as heartfelt and final as that 911 call may have come off, luckily, Bruce survived. Now, because the shooter was a minor and it was ruled an unintentional accident, there wasn't a high-profile trial or this long prison sentence that made the news. The story mostly stayed in the spotlight and focused on the call because of how amazing her composure was under the worst possible circumstances. Like, Diane, who is now retired, is probably my favorite 911 dispatcher, and I've gone through so many of these. But I think the most important part of this 911 call is that just no matter how doom and gloom things are getting, and no matter what your relationship is with God or religion, I truly believe that having a strong faith can honestly get you through anything. Welcome into Terrifying But True, the segment where I choose one random true crime, dark history, or paranormal case and do a deep dive on it. This episode, I'm diving into one of the most interesting cryptids out there, the Mothman. You've probably heard the name, but the actual story, it's way weirder than people expect. And even though it's not technically proven true, it still fits right in with all things unexplained, especially when it comes to certain events that take place. So put on your best paranormal investigator gear and let's get into it.
When the unthinkable becomes reality, we find ourselves questioning everything, as some stories are too terrifying but true.
Now, this all starts back in November of 1966 near Clendenin, West Virginia. And what's creepy is it doesn't start dramatic. It's just 5 guys in a cemetery, middle of the day, doing normal work, preparing a grave. Then, out of nowhere, something lifts up from the trees and flies right over them. They said it looked like a brown human being, not a bird, not really an animal, more like if a person just grew wings and took off, which is already enough to mess with you, right? But then a few days later, it just keeps escalating. On November 15th, you've got 2 young couples driving past this abandoned TNT plant near Point Pleasant. and they see these two huge glowing eyes attached to something shaped like a man, but bigger, like 6 or 7 feet tall, with wings folded up behind it. And it's not just standing there either. When it moves, they panic and then they take off, but then they see it again. This time it's on a hillside and it spreads its wings and just goes after them. At this point, they're driving over 100 miles per hour, and this thing is keeping up with them like it's nothing. They report it to Deputy Sheriff Millard Halstead and say it followed them all the way down Highway 62 to the edge of town. The wild part is, they weren't the only ones. That same night, another group of 4 people saw it 3 different times. So at that point, it's not just one random sighting. It's like something is actively moving around out there. That same night, things just kept getting more and more strange. So there's this guy, Newell Partridge, about 90 miles away in Salem, just sitting at home watching TV. Nothing weird. Then suddenly his screen goes dark. This strange pattern fills it, and he hears this loud whining sound outside, like something powering up and then cutting off. He later said it sounded like a generator winding up. His dog, Bandit, starts going off on the porch, howling, so that prompts him to go outside and check it out. He shines a flashlight toward his barn and sees these 2 red circles staring back at him. They're not blinking, they're not moving like normal animal eyes, they're just there. Then his dog Bandit takes off toward it. Newell Partridge goes back inside to grab the gun, but by the time he does, he's too scared to even go back out, and understandably so, because I would not be going back out there. Honestly, I'm lying, because if my dog ran towards something scary like that, I would go after my dog. Cut to the next morning. The dog Bandit is gone, completely gone, and he never returns, unfortunately. A couple days later, Partridge reads about the Point Pleasant sightings, and there's this detail that hits him pretty hard. One of the witnesses said that they saw a large dog lying on the road that night, but when they came back minutes later, it was gone. That's when it clicks for him that it might have been his dog Bandit. So now it's not just sightings, it's like things are disappearing too. On November 16th, there's a press conference. The couples tell their story again, and Deputy Halstead backs them up, saying he's known them forever and they're not the type to make things like this up. Reporters take it seriously, and that's when the name Mothman starts getting used. So after that, everything kind of centers around this abandoned TNT plant. Then there's this encounter with Miss Marcella Bennett, and this one's a lot. She pulls up to a friend's house with her baby, and something moves near her car. She said that it looked like it had been lying down, then slowly stood up. She describes it as this big gray shape that was bigger than a man with, you guessed it, glowing eyes. It scared her so bad that she dropped her baby, and I don't mean to laugh at that. So she grabs her baby and runs inside, and everyone locks themselves in while this thing walks up onto the porch and looks through the windows. But by the time police get there, it disappears. So after that, she's not okay for a while. She starts having nightmares, she gets anxiety, hearing this screaming sound outside her house. She even thought it followed her home. Now, around the same time that people were seeing this Mothman in Point Pleasant, there was also a spike in UFO activity. And not just random lights, people were describing structured objects, glowing orbs, things hovering low over the TNT area. A lot of witnesses said that the lights didn't move like normal aircraft. They'd hover, then shoot off instantly or drift slowly, and then just vanish. Some people reported multiple lights moving together, almost like they were coordinated. What's weird is these sightings were happening before Mothman showed up too. Like something was already building in this area. And that's where John Keel comes in. He's this writer who basically dives headfirst into all of it and starts documenting everything. But what's interesting is he doesn't think it's aliens in the usual sense. He leans more toward the idea that whatever this is, it's been around for a long time. just showing up in different forms, depending on the era. Monsters, angels, UFOs. It just changes how it presents itself. So John Keel said that around 100 people saw the Mothman during that year, and their descriptions were all weirdly similar, like 5 to 7 feet tall, kind of wide, moving like a person but not quite right. Its eyes were up near its shoulders, which is already unsettling, and its wings didn't flap, they just glided. But somehow it could shoot straight up into the air like gravity didn't apply to it. It also made this low humming sound when it flew, and instead of talking, it just let out this really harsh screech. Some people said it sounded like a woman screaming. So Keel starts connecting all these other things too. TVs glitching, phones acting weird, cars stalling near the TNT area, lights in the sky, even poltergeist type stuff, doors opening on their own, strange noises, voices. One family got so freaked out that they literally had to move away. Then we have this reporter by the name of Mary Heyer, who's covering everything. At one point, she gets over 500 calls from people seeing lights in the sky. And she has her own weird encounter as well. She claims this strange man walks into her office. He's short, thick glasses, has a bowl haircut, and he seems just really off. He asks her for directions, but keeps getting closer to her, staring in a way that makes her really uncomfortable. And at one point, he picks up a pen and just studies it, like he's never seen a pen before. Then he laughs and runs out. But that's not the only encounter, because later she sees this strange man again, and he rushes into a black car and disappears. Now, the Silver Bridge incident is kind of the final and honestly most tragic piece of the whole Mothman story, and it's really where everything takes a really dark turn. It was a pretty busy bridge, especially during rush hour. Just normal everyday traffic, people heading home, nothing unusual. But on December 15th, 1967, around 5 in the evening, it just collapsed. There's no warning, there's no time to react. The entire structure gave out while it was packed with cars. Vehicles just dropped straight into the Ohio River below. And in total, 46 people were killed. Some were recovered, some weren't. It was chaotic, and the town was completely shaken after this. So this happens after you have this full year of Mothman sightings, UFO reports, strange lights, even Men in Black encounters. Like, the area had been building towards something, and then this massive tragedy hits. And that's why a lot of people connect the two. I will say that officially, investigators found that the collapse was caused by a failure in a single component, a small metal eye bar in the suspension chain. It had a tiny crack from corrosion and wear and tear, and once it snapped, the whole bridge basically had no backup system. It was definitely a design flaw. Once one part failed, everything went with it. So from an engineering standpoint, and I am no engineer, but from that standpoint, it wasn't supernatural. It was a structural failure that had gone unnoticed. But that doesn't stop the theories, because that same night, people near the TNT area reported seeing over a dozen strange lights in the sky. And while the town is dealing with this tragedy, more of these strange men show up, asking about UFOs instead of the bridge. One of them even claims to be from Ohio, but doesn't know basic things about the area. Some people said maybe it was a sandhill crane, but the witnesses were like, no. Even Keel thought maybe a few sightings could have been misidentified animals, especially since people were already on edge, but there were just too many consistent reports from people who seemed credible. And Keel's theory was that Point Pleasant was some kind of window area or portal, like a thin spot where different kinds of phenomena bleed through. Creatures, lights, strange people, the Men in Black, all connected somehow. Other people tied it to something called the Cornstalk Curse. Now, the Cornstalk Curse is a famous piece of Appalachian folklore centered on Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And according to the legend, the Shawnee leader, Chief Cornstalk, was unjustly murdered by American militiamen at Fort Randolph in 1777 while he was there on a peaceful mission. Now, as he lay dying, he supposedly invoked this curse upon the land, decreeing that the area would be forever plagued by tragedy and disaster. But while historical records of the murder exist, most historians believe the specific curse story was actually popularized much later. However, locals and paranormal enthusiasts call back to the Cornstalk Curse to explain these real-life local catastrophes like this 1967 collapse of the Silver Bridge, along with all of these weird things, including the Mothman. And honestly, the creepiest part is that it hasn't really ended, because years later, similar sightings start popping up again, especially around Chicago. Now, since 2011, over 100 people have reported seeing something that sounds almost identical around places like O'Hare, Lake Michigan, even random neighborhoods. There was another spike in 2017 and even into 2024 and 2025. People are still reporting seeing this tall, winged figure, sometimes on rooftops, sometimes taking off into the air. But whether you believe in the Mothman or not, I'll leave that up to you, but what we can't deny is there's definitely something unexplainable going down in Point Pleasant. Let's take another break. Welcome back, beautiful. Let's get into Ralph versus the Rot, the segment where I react to your stories, experiences, situationships, and answer your questions while doing my best to give you perspective and or a little advice. To submit, simply email screamsocietypodcast@gmail.com. My inbox is always open over on Instagram at Scream Society Podcast. Or if you want to reach out to my personal account, it is at Ralph of the Dead. Or you can click the anonymous submissions link in all my bios. Remember, mostly everything remains anonymous. So at the beginning of the episode, I shared a story that I was sent. Basically, this person was working at Taco Bell their senior year of high school, and there was this couple that would always come through late at night. The girl was always driving, really quiet, really timid, and the guy in the passenger seat was the complete opposite, just aggressive, controlling, disgusting, I might add, and very aware that people were watching, but didn't care. At least that's what I took from this. And more disturbing, one of their coworkers even claimed they saw the guy slap the change out of her hand one night as they drove off. So at one point, the person who sent this in tried to talk to her a little more just to fill things out, but the guy immediately cut it off, shut it down, like she wasn't allowed to have a conversation. So when the girl came back alone during the day, she asked to use the phone, and as soon as she got on it, he came rushing in, yelling at her to get off the phone. The workers at Taco Bell panicked and called the police, even grabbed the phone from her to do it, which they said they felt bad about after. But in that moment, personally, I think I would have done the same thing. I think that was the right thing to do. The couple unfortunately gets kicked out, but police end up finding them still in the parking lot, and they take the girl. And that's where the story ends. And I know you probably couldn't do this because that would put everyone at risk, but a part of me in that situation would do everything I could to have kept the girl separate from the guy. Because first, two things that come to mind, unfortunately, is this is a domestic abuse or trafficking situation. You'd be surprised how ballsy these creeps are. And this has been such a common topic lately because unfortunately it's such a common issue. And I always get irked by how we have to go about situations like this. Like we couldn't just grab the girl and lock her in the bathroom or bring her to the back to keep her safe. Like, although maybe I would have signaled for her to go lock herself in the bathroom. I don't know. But I think you handled it as best as you could. I mean, you were in high school and you said you acted quickly, so good on you. I definitely wouldn't let it eat at you so much because, again, you did everything you could at this time. And if she left with the police, then I'm hoping maybe they helped her somehow. We can only hope. And also pray that this creep is not still out there. But going back to you, the submitter, truly take care of your mental health. Obviously, if this still affects you in some way, maybe talk to someone professionally. Things like this can really mess with us, and maybe not in the moment or right after, but maybe along the line. Something can probably set off a trigger. I don't know. I'm talking too much, but more importantly, before we move on from this, if you or someone you know are dealing with anything similar to this, do not wait. reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They offer languages from English, Spanish to 200 plus through an interpretation service 24/7. Just call 800-799-7233 or text BEGIN to 88788. Let's get into some questions. Gonna try to lighten the mood here after that. All right. With a new scary movie coming out, how well do you think the world will take it? I believe you're referring to the parody film, Scary Movie 6. That's a slippery slope, and we're gonna go on it. I think right now we need humor. Right now we need to laugh. Right now we need to laugh at ourselves. I think over the last few years, we have just gotten so serious and just wanting to be politically correct. I think one of the most important things to wrap your heads around is intent. I don't think that these types of movies or even comics, like I see so many comics talking about walking on eggshells because they are afraid to offend somebody. But I really think that intent is important here. And if the goal is to make us laugh, then I think it should be fine. Like, we really should laugh at ourselves more. The world would be a way better place. And the Wayans brothers, the ones who are putting this film out, they make fun of everyone. To me, they have a really inclusive style of comedy, and I think that's what's needed. But if they were doing this just to be transphobic, fatphobic, all of the isms and obias, then I think we'd have a problem. But I truly think that they want to take society back to a place where we can laugh at ourselves and have fun. What clothing brands do you wear? You dress so cute. Thank you. I really don't think I dress that cute. But I pretty much wear, I mean, if you see what I'm wearing a hat stupidly. I'm wearing a hat, like, no, it's not even on fully, but yeah, I'm wearing a tank top from Target and an Adidas hat, which apparently you're not allowed to wear Adidas anymore. Like, I hate when people say, oh, you can't wear this brand anymore. Like, I'm going to wear whatever the hell I want to wear, and you're going to shut up and leave me alone. So yeah, I'm just wearing my Adidas hat and a white tank top. But if you're referring to like Instagram and stuff like that, I've always had like a really boring sense of style. Like I've always just worn black and like black jeans and like Doc Martens or my white Adidas shoes that are staple in most of my photos. I've been really getting into like Levi jeans again. The baggy ones are just so comfortable and roomy. I don't think I'll ever go back to skinny jeans. I've also been getting back into Abercrombie and Fitch, which is apparently coming back, and their clothes are super comfy. But yeah, I also shop on places like Fashion Nova, which could be cringe, but I mean, I find good stuff there, and Boohoo Man, and yeah, just pretty much anywhere. Right now, I am looking for a store or a creator that puts out really cool like graphic t-shirts, because I do want to enter like my graphic t-shirt era. So if any of you out there listening know of any, send them my way. Stay tuned, because I've been wanting to do like this whole like gothic cowboy look as well. I want to be creative, like not just with this, but like in my style too. Like, you got to change it up. And I really don't care how old I am. I'm going to dress however I want to dress. What is the grossest story you've heard? The grossest story I've heard. Actually, there's a story that I always tell. I heard it at like a family barbecue. The craziest stuff has been happening at my family barbecues, I'm telling you. But I was being what we call in Mexican culture a comadre, just listening to all the women talking and gossiping. And one of my cousin's ex-girlfriends was telling us a story. And it's really graphic, so I'm putting a trigger warning out there. But if you do not want to get grossed out, skip over this, because this is probably the grossest story I have heard. As someone who has a phobia of like worms and maggots and all of that, I'm warning you right now, this story is disgusting. So one of my cousin's ex-girlfriends was telling us a story about one of their friends who had gotten really drunk one night with her boyfriend at like a club, and they went back to their place and were starting to have sex, all of that. And the part that really confuses me is what I'm about to say. So at one point, they couldn't find lube, and they resorted to going to the fridge and getting a container of mayo and using that as lube. So as you can imagine, I can imagine, the smell of mayo is disgusting. So immediately that would turn me off. Not to mention the horror that followed after, because apparently she had some issues with stuff going on down there to the point where she had an infestation of maggots in her vaginal area. And that's where I'm going to leave the story. But I think when I was listening, I remember this very vividly too, because the look on my face was like so shocked. I just did it in my camera right now, but if you're just listening to the audio, like you can't see my face. But yeah, I think that has to be one of the most disgusting stories that I have heard. Anyway, we're going to end it right there. As always, a big thank you to those who submitted to the podcast. Make sure to get those questions in. Always remember to keep it respectful and honest. Check out the links in the bio on the podcast socials and support our homosexual in need by buying some merch. And until next time, I will scare you all on the next episode. Disgusting.
Thank you for tuning into the Scream Society podcast. Hosted, written, produced, and edited by yours truly, Ralph Anthony. Help the society grow by subscribing on your favorite platform and leave a rating and review. I always strive for 5s. Have a horror or paranormal experience? Want me to answer your questions on the show? Submit to beacons.ai/The Scream Society. Connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Scream Society Podcast. And until next time, I'll scare you on the next episode.